silent mode. We are going to begin. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Esteemed Professor Dr. Anis Ahmad, the founding Vice Chancellor of Prifah International University, our speaker for today, Honorable Dean, Deputy Deans, Deputy Director, Heads of Departments, Head of Research, Associate Professor, Professor Dr. Kamal Onya, Professor Dr. Mumtaz, Associate Professor Dr. Badri Najib, Dr. Usman Jafar, Dr. Hamud, Associate Professor Dr. Dania, and ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. A very good afternoon to all of our distinguished guests, our esteemed speaker and participants. I am Haslina Ibrahim and I am your MC for today. Before we begin, let us recite Al-Fatihah. Okay, while waiting for the rest to come and occupy the seats, let us sing the beautiful names of Allah and the university anthem. So I would like to invite all participants to rise.
Nas'aluka ya man huwa Allahu alladhi la ilaha illa huwa ar-Rahmanur Rahim, al-Malikul Quddusus Salamul Mu'minul Muhaiminul Azizul Jabbar, al-Mutakabbirul Khaliqul Bari'ul Musawwirul Ghaffar wal Qahharul Wahhabur Razzaqul Fattahul Alim, al-Qabidul Basitul Khafir ar-Rafi'ul Mu'izzul Muzillus Sami'ul Basirul Hakamul al-Latiful Khabir al-Alimul Azim al-Ghafurul Shakur al-Aliyul Kabirul Hafizul Muqim al-Hasibul Jalil al-Karimul Raqibul Mujibul Wasi'ul Hakimul Wadudul Majidul Ba'ithul Shahid al-Haqqul Wakil al-Qawiyul Matin al-Waliyul Hamid al-Muhsil Mubdi'ul Mu'in al-Muhyil Mumitul Hayyul Qayyum al-Wajid al-Majid al-Wahidul Samadul Qadirul Muqtadirul Muqaddimul Muakhirul Awwalul Akhir al-Zahirul Batinul Walil Mutta'alil Bar Tawwabul Muntakimul Afur Raufun Malikul Mulki Dzul Jalali wal Ikram al-Muqsit al-Jami'ul Ghaniyul Muniyul Mani'ud Darul Nafi'un Nurul Hadil Badi'ul Baqi al-Warisul Rashidus Sabur alladhi laysa kamithlihi shay'un wa huwa as-Sami'ul Basir. Allahumma salli afdal as-salati ala as'adil makhluqatika sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim ala ma'lumatika wa midada kalimatika to the spirit of Islam. Revelation and reason shall prevail. Merging faith and knowledge, we, the Khalifa, we will fulfill the Amanah. Together we make the world a better place forever. Expand the culture of Iqra. Human is to realize the meaning of Ramadan al-Arabi. Together we make the world a better place forever. Expand the culture of Iqra. Human is to realize the meaning of mercy to all worlds for
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. We gather here today for the annual memorial lecture in honor of Professor Emeritus Dr. Abdulhamid Abusulayman. This event is organized by the Abdulhamid Abusulayman Kuliah of Islamic Real Knowledge and Human Sciences in collaboration with the International Institute of Islamic Thought. The Kuliah of Abdulhamid Abusulayman would like to express her sincere gratitude to IIIT for their generous support in facilitating the presence of our esteemed speaker, Professor Dr. Anis Ahmad. We deeply appreciate Professor Anis' willingness to share his valuable time with us, allowing us to benefit from his extensive experience in teaching, researching, administrating, and managing Islamic studies faculties. And especially for today's event, I believe that Professor Anis will share some of the memorable anecdotes involving Almarhum Professor Emeritus, allowing us to remember and appreciate his legacies. Dear professors, associate professors, doctors, academic members, postgraduate students, guests, ladies and gentlemen, to commence today's program, let us begin with the recitation of the Holy Quran, seeking the blessings and guidance from the Almighty Allah. Please welcome Brother Mas'ud, who will recite from Surah Al-Ahzab, verse 21 to 23.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا. ولما رأى المؤمنون الأحزاب وما زادهم إلا إيمانا وتسليما. من المؤمنين رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه، فمنهم من قضى نحبه ومنهم من ينتظر وما بدلوا تبديلا، ليجزي الله الصادقين بصدقهم ويعذب المنافقين إن شاء أو يتوب عليهم، إن الله كان غفورا رحيما. صدق الله العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Sadaqallahul Azim. Thank you very much, Brother Mas'ud, for the beautiful recitation. To proceed with our session, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Shukran Abdulrahman, the Dean of AHAS, AHAS KIR KHS, to deliver his welcoming remarks. فليتفضل مشكورا.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin, wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amin. Amma ba'd. Thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Hasina Ibrahim, for chairing the session. Professor Dr. Anis Ahmad, our speaker for today's memorial lecture. Associate Professor Dr. Badri Najib, Dean of IAM Academy. Professor Emeritus Dr. Jamil Osman from Triple IT. My brothers and sisters, Deputy Deans, Heads of Department, academics, students, both undergraduates and postgraduates. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very pleasant afternoon to all of you. I would like to also acknowledge the presence of Brother Nizar Muhammad, okay, and Jaksai, Professor Dr. Kamal Onia, here to join us this afternoon. Thank you very much for your presence. Indeed, it is an enormous support to the Kuliah and University. Brothers and sisters, Professor Anis, Abdulhamid Abusulayman annual memorial lecture is conducted to be reminded and to learn about Professor Emeritus Dr. Abdulhamid Sulaiman's work. It is not a platform or an avenue for us to only glorify him, but to be reminded of his noble visions in bringing higher education to a greater height. He has set good foundation for not only IIUM, but for all universities to integrate knowledge with other knowledge or with context. We have learned a lot from Professor Abdulhamid Abusulayman, through which we try our best to continue his legacy in our daily work activities nowadays. Professor Abdulhamid Abusulayman is not only a higher education manager, he is also a leader to all of us, a mentor to all of us, a father, a brother to many of us as well. Right? So today we are going to listen to Professor Anis, who is going to talk about the legacy of visionary scholarship, honoring Professor Emeritus Dr. Abdulhamid Abusulayman. I believe that all of us will be enlightened by you, and we will take your advice or guidance, okay, away with us so that we can emulate them in our academic activities. Professor Anis, in this hall there are your sons and daughters whom you have nurtured last time. So we are very lucky to have that, opportunity to learn directly from you, right? And in this hall also, there are sons and daughters of ours whom we want them to listen from you. They are also our brothers and sisters who didn't have the chance to learn from you, Professor Anis, and I believe that this 1 hour chance that we have, okay, will make them, or will give them the opportunity to learn from you, Professor Anis. So with that, wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman, the Dean of ours, KIRKHS, for honoring us with your presence and delivering the welcoming remarks. So normally what I would say, Professor Dr. Anis, is the chain now continued from Almarhum Professor Emeritus and to your good self, to your students and to your students. Alright, so now we have arrived at the much anticipated session, the memorial lecture by Professor Dr. Anis Ahmad. The title of this commemorative speech is The Legacy of Visionary Scholarship, honoring Professor Emeritus Dr. Abdulhamid Abusulayman. I would like to invite Professor Dr. Muhammad Mumtaz Ali to introduce our esteemed speaker and to moderate the session. Please, Prof.
Honorable Professor Dr. Anis Ahmad, Honorable Professor Dr. Shukran Abdulhamid, my former Dean Badri Najib, Associate Professor Dr. Selina, and all other deputy deans, and my special welcoming to Professor Kamaronia, who is our dearest sister, who lives in our hearts, in fact. And we have learned from her how to dedicate ourselves for commitment. So may Allah grant her excellent health, and we may again benefit from her in this campus. My pleasure to be the moderator for this session. Why? Because three important personalities with whom I met in this university, and they created a big place in my heart, and I still have love for them. Late Professor Muhammad Kamal Hassan, our Tansri. I never call him with doctor or professor, I always call him brother. And the same goes with Professor Abdulhamid Abusulayman and Professor Anis Ahmad. We always call these brothers just brothers, no title, nothing, because we felt so much intimacy with them. I have the pleasure to moderate this session, and inshallah I have the pleasure to introduce our beloved, internationally known scholar and speaker, Professor Dr. Anis Ahmad, who is currently the Vice Chancellor of Rifa International University in Islamabad. Inshallah, we will listen him. After that, we will open the floor for question and answer because he strongly believes in interaction. And this is brief introduction because I do not want to give long and be here as an obstacle between you and him. Very brief. Professor Dr. Anis Ahmad, the founder, Vice Chancellor and the President of Rifa International University, Islamabad, Pakistan. He did his MA and PhD from Temple University in Islamic Studies and Comparative Religion. He has previously held senior academic position as Dean Kuliya of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences, International Islamic University, Malaysia, Vice President, International Islamic University, Islamabad, Dean, Faculty of Abusuluddin and Founding Director General of the Dawa Academy of the International Islamic University, Islamabad. He is Professor and former President and Secretary General of Association of Muslim Social Scientists, US and Canada, and a fellow of the University of Science, Malaysia. His work focuses on Islamic thought, education systems, and the development of Islamic studies faculties. Dr. Anis Ahmad is highly regarded for his expertise in integrating traditional Islamic knowledge with contemporary academic perspectives. I remember once Professor Anis was introducing Professor Najatullah Siddiqui, who is very known for his contribution in Islamic economics, in Atawari conference room in PJ, and Professor Anis introduced him and he said that he is a living jurist who is the expert of modern Western economics as well as Islamic economics. So I have the same words for Professor Anis, who has mastery over modern Western philosophical thought and many disciplines, as well as mastery in our Islamic heritage and contemporary Islamic thought. Now, Professor Anis, please come forward and give us a chance to listen to you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala khatimil anbiya. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. My very dear brother Professor Shukran, brother Professor Tamim, brother Professor Mumtaz, our very dear sister Professor Qamarunia, brother Badri, faculty members, research scholars, I take it as a great honor to be here this afternoon and very much humiliated by the words used by Professor Mumtaz about me. I'm just a student who has been trying to learn more and more from his colleagues. And I hope that all of you will try to raise your questions so we can explore more in the area. I do not like to give a long lecture. It will be very, very brief. First focusing on the heritage and the contribution of very dear brother, Professor Abdulhamid. and then perhaps a few words about what do we mean by his heritage or the II village. Professor Abdulhamid is one of those young scholars who have made an impact on intellectuals not only in this university but at a global level. His academic career is long, but before that, as a young activist, he participated wholeheartedly in World Assembly of Muslim Youth. I knew him when he was doing his PhD in University of Pennsylvania. That goes back to 1969. From 1969 onwards, we developed a very loving brotherhood to the extent that I always felt part of his family and he felt part of my family. I cannot recall during my stay in Philadelphia for over 6 or 7 years, there was hardly an evening when I will not be in his home and discuss with him his research which he was doing and also interacting on issues he is facing in Dawah in North America. But Abdulhamid belonged to a generation of young Muslim scholars who wanted to challenge the West and at the same time wanted to come up with a critical approach on traditional Islamic thought. And that was a common interest for me and many others with Abdulhamid. Among those were not only social scientists, but people who were physical scientists. A group of young persons who were at that time involved in Islamic work in North America included Jamal Barzanji, Ahmad Tunji, Hisham al-Talib, Tijani Abu Judairi, Muhammad al-Shamma, and several others who were, Mahmud Rashdan particularly, who were at that point either were completing their PhD or were about to join actual life. So it was not just a matter of Dr. Abdulhamid Abusulayman, it was a matter of a group of young people who had an enthusiasm and a vision. And that vision was to transform mindset of social scientists. At the same time, make an impact on others. So it was this group of young people, I mentioned their names specifically, who came forward and established in 1972 Association Muslim Social Scientists. 1 year earlier, the same group established Association Muslim Scientists and Engineers. And a year later, Islamic Medical Association. These three groups were created in North America in order to address the same issue at three different levels. It was not just social scientists, but engineers, medical doctors, who were supposed to think in a different manner. These young people at that time had a vision. And that vision was how we translate these discussions and ideas into a reality. One effort that was made was to create in 1980 IIIT in order to develop texts and material on various areas of social sciences. In other words, to ultimately use academic environment at an institutional level, and that means institution building. Individuals may have a towering personality and knowledge, but unless their knowledge is institutionalized, it evaporates. And therefore the idea was to let us work for institutions. In 1980, Islamic University, Islamabad was established, and I joined it in 1981 as founding dean there. In 83, IIU Malaysia was established, and later on, Brother Abdulhamid joined as its rector. When he joined as the rector, then his dream was, let us together work and now see how far our vision and our idealism can be converted into a living reality. For that, I was asked to take permission from my university in Islamabad and come and join here in order to build a new faculty. That's how IRKHS started, and particularly I can never forget the contribution of our brother Professor Kamal in its establishment, because it was essentially a further development of Center for Fundamental Knowledge, which he was heading in IIU before I joined. With reference to Dr. Abdulhamid's personality, I will make just one or two comments. First and foremost, by nature he was a very humble person. Although people thought that he has a personality which was a bit harsh, no. Never in his life he was harsh. But the problem is, those people who want to observe principles are often misunderstood. He was a man of principle, and therefore he would not like to make any compromise on principles. That might give you the impression that he is a hard taskmaster. Secondly, he had a commitment to Islam and the Quran. Whenever we met, we were discussing issues, trying to go more in depth of the Quranic meaning. He was very much critical of the conventional approach of fuqaha and mufassirin. And that's why quite often he made some comments which were taken by people as a bit unusual. Anyone who has an ijtihadi personality is bound to make slight deviation from the past. It is taqleed which is the main problem of Muslim Ummah. Nevertheless, ijtihad does not mean freelance thinking and coming up with your own ideas, giving them a name coming from the Quran. No, ijtihad means when you have in-depth understanding of the Quran and Sunnah, knowing those principles which emerge from the Quran and apply those principles with all possible detachment and honesty. When a person gets involved and attached, then it no more remains an objective view. And there's a very delicate process which has to be observed by all those who think they want to be honest to Quran and Sunnah. quite often the Quran is used for support of personal views, while personal views should be corrected based on the Quran. Abdulhamid from the beginning, as I said, had a very humble and kind approach. When we established AMSS, I was its founding Secretary General and he was executive member. I remained for 6 years Secretary General with Professor Farooqi as its president for 6 years. Then I became president. But through all this period of 8-9 years, Brother Abdulhamid was member of our executive committee and always contributing and being away from taking any responsibility. Yet, if we had to make a mailing to our members, then he will come to my place where I was living in Philadelphia, and on the floor we will put a whole jumble of addresses and handouts to go out. We will physically put labels of names and addresses, put them in a sack, go together to the post office. At that time there were no emails, and drop all those physically. That means he never felt that when we are doing things like workers and not like intellectuals, then we are not of any good standing. No. Actually, your worth is revealed when you do certain things people don't expect. This concept of protocols and this concept of eulogization of people is totally against Islamic spirit. Islam never allows praising people in their face, particularly. Anyhow, so we traveled a lot together. Quite often when we have conferences, then we will travel. And it did not have a Mercedes-Benz nor a Volvo, but a normal small American car. And sometimes when it was snowing and very harsh environment and we were driving very carefully, once we were stopped by a petrol and Abdulhamid was asked to give a breathing test because he thought that they are very careful, so something wrong with them. So we traveled together, worked together when he was in America. And when I left in 81 for Islamabad, we were in touch because we were like family members. Even 3 days back I got a call from his daughter. His children have been close to me and my family close to his family. It's difficult to recollect a long companionship in which small incidents matter more. Anyhow, the zeal and energy of Abdulhamid was amazing. And quite often, after working for hours and hours, he was still full of energy. Not because of any physical quality, but because of his commitment to Islam. And that's what I think is to be learned by the coming generation. The internet generation, who are always looking towards virtual reality, who look for virtual muftis, who look for resource coming from Google and so, they need to learn how to be patient and persistent. In that respect, I think he presented a role model for his colleagues and companions, and I can bear witness that he was really an ideal scholar and real contributor to modern thought. Having said that, I believe every Muslim scholar is indebted to the earlier scholars. Therefore, no one can say that what we are saying is something of our own invention. Knowledge is a continuum. Knowledge is a long journey. And those who appear towering personalities, after a while, becomes normal human beings. And new minds and new personalities emerge. Islamic history is full of persons who dominated an age, but then a new age came and scholarship still continued. In that sense, the fruit of his effort, this university, is essentially a sadqa jariyah. IRKH, its visualization, its realization is an ongoing virtue. And everyone who participated in that, Professor Kamal, Malik Badri, many others, even students, because we could not succeed unless our students were attuned towards that. The impact of message can only be measured when you look into behavior of students. If they become creative and critical, then we have succeeded. If they become blind followers, we have failed. Therefore, the heritage is not just following a few terminologies. Those of brothers who know me are fully aware that I am very much against academic terminologies used by scholars. I believe in simplifying knowledge and not making it complicated. Therefore, all those terms which you have been using become irrelevant when it is a matter of what you want to convey. All you want to convey is very simple. There cannot be two gods. A God of university, which we say is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wants us to seek knowledge. And a God of glamour and popularity outside the university, which means grabbing power, authority, collecting as much resources as possible, become a rich man. There are no two gods. Tawheed means knowledge which is subservient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as well as our mind, our heart, our activities in home and market, everything subservient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's desire and wish. This is essentially the meaning of Islamization. You may call it by any name, epistemic change. You may call it a revolutionary approach. You may call it a reconstruction. You may call it revivalism. You can use hundreds of terminologies. But in simple words, the idea is knowledge is not independent of subservience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May that be social sciences or applied sciences. That's why, as I mentioned earlier, the group of young people in North America did not confine themselves to social sciences, but they established Islamic Medical Association, Islamic Association of Engineers and Scientists, and the idea was that all these areas need to be integrated in a manner that we come up with a holistic personality and holistic view of life. Every single human creation has a shortcoming of being finite, because human being finite cannot create infinite. It's only Tawheed which is infinite. And therefore, when Tawheed is used as the basic criteria for development of knowledge, then knowledge becomes transcendent. And transcendence means progress and development. So if humanity wants to have any progress, it cannot be based on that knowledge which is finite, but only that knowledge which is infinite. Scientific development, social development, psychological development, all disciplines are subject to this principle. And that's why it's a gigantic task to set uphill movement. It will be incorrect to think that in a span of hardly 50, 60 years, you can count from 1970, hardly 60 years, or around 60 years. This is not a period in which you can judge success or failure. I always say that European thought was never constructed in a century. From 16th century onward, you have phases which after a break or after a while disregard what was in the past and claim we are modernity. Same modernity becomes post-modernity. Unending process, because all human efforts are finite, incomplete. To make them complete and impressive and effective, there is only one way for the whole of humanity. In that sense, I believe those who think Islamization is their monopoly, their area, do not understand Islamization. Islamization belongs to every single human being. All human beings need to live holistically, fairly, with truth. And therefore, if these values are transcendent, it cannot be a finite phenomenon. Therefore, this university and university in Islamabad or elsewhere, which takes basic assumption of Tawheed as its foundation, is an ongoing process. The Sadqa Jariyah. People come and go, but this process shall inshallah continue. There was time when people thought if Ghazali is gone, Islam will be gone. At time people thought if Shafi is gone, Islam is gone. Abu Hanifa is gone, Islam is gone. Ibn Taymiyyah is gone, Islam is gone. Shahwalillah is gone, Islam is gone. But Islam remained there. These big names did appear and play their role. Similarly, contemporary thinkers are supposed to play their role. But with their name, we cannot say that movements belong to name. Names belong to movements. It was the movement of Islamic revival which gave birth to many scholars. In the subcontinent, in North America, in the Arabic-speaking world, all those names you hear and quote as references, the name of Brother Niyar Siddiqui was mentioned by Brother Mumtaz. He was a product of movement, not the contrary. Revivalist movement produced him, not that he produced movement. Therefore, movements should be understood, and we should try to find out what is our role in the movement. I take always IIU as a movement. I define Rifa as a movement, not as institution. In the printed documents of Rifa, we always call Rifa is a movement for ethical social change, which means it's not confined to any terminologies, but it is a universal approach. I define ethics as objective and not subjective. Ethics as divine and not as human. If ethic is divine, then only Islamic ethics stand the test. All ethics fall short of criteria because they are subjective. All schools of ethics are named after individuals who thought this is ethics. It's only Islamic ethics which has no inventor but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet as provider of those values. And both Quran and Sunnah, in my understanding, have universal applicability. They are not confined to any single age or space. It's completely incorrect to think that whatever was done in the streets of Medina impacted on Muslims. No, it was Islam which created the streets of Medina, and then those streets became the guidelines for the humanity. Islam came to ethicalize and Islamize humanity, not to Arabize. Therefore, the movement of Islamic thought or revival of Islamic thought is not limited to any single person or age. It is a movement that will keep on producing Rijal like Abdulhamid, like our present rector Professor Usman, many others who are doing their job. These are the persons who are products of a movement, and therefore their role has to be recognized, appreciated, but taken in the context. Last thing, I believe that young scholars have a role to play in future by first discovering first-hand what is Western thought, not second-hand. Studying directly those sources on which West is founded. At the same time, studying carefully those scholars who have criticized the West, and then come up with their own contribution which should replace Western thought. Myself and many of the persons who are educated in the West or in their own countries are knowingly or unknowingly intellectually colonized. Language, concepts, themes are approached with the mind of the West. Unless we decolonize our minds by fully understanding the West and coming out of it, there cannot be any production of ilm nafi. Knowledge will only be productive and beneficial when it is relieved of its colonial spirit. Whatever you study in economics, sociology, engineering are tools of colonization of mind and society. These have been invented in an environment which is imbued with racism and colonialism. Does not matter you study those texts in Malaysia or Pakistan or Makkah Mukarramah. So I have to decolonize our minds. Only then you can discover the real dimensions of Quran and Sunnah. The Quran and Sunnah are not a complex phenomena. these are open realities. The Quran calls itself a kitab which is mubin, a bayan which is mubin, a text which is for the whole of humanity. How can Muslims claim Sharia is their property? Sharia is for them? No. Sharia consists of all those commands and principles which are essentially beneficial for every human being. And therefore, Sharia is not a property of Muslims. It has to reach out. It has to be made available in its non-limited understanding to rest of mankind. I have yet to find a non-Muslim community which will say that stealing is a really artistic activity. They always is bad. I have yet to find a community which say that hitting a child is something desirable. I have to find a people who say that disrespecting elderly people is no problem. Globally, what the Quran has said about respect of your parents, what the Quran has said about respect of humanity is global. Sharia is global. It's not a matter of Muslims. It's a Muslim phobia. They think that it's there. No. For the whole of humanity. So when we talk about quote unquote Islamization, many antennas raise and people think they want to force us to become Muslim. No. The movement never had this idea. When we use this term, it was used for a while. Does not mean it's used for eternity. You can use a different term. So long it serves the purpose. IOK is a term. Maybe it may not be useful after a while. Have a different term. But the process and movement must continue. The process means every single effort has to emerge from the Quran and Sunnah. And that means direct understanding of the Quran and Sunnah. That means swimming deep into their meaning and what is behind the meaning. Then we can come up with a claim that we are students of Islam and we are carriers of Islam to the whole of mankind, which is our definition. We are defined as Khaira Ummah. We are defined as a people of Dawah. Ilm is Dawah, knowledge is Dawah. And therefore I hope this Kulliyah particularly, which has among its founders Abdulhamid, Professor Kamal, a whole team of scholars coming from Turkey, from Egypt, from Sudan, from all over the world, those who are part of this Kulliyah. It is their contribution. No single person can take the credit. It's all of them who contributed, and this spirit must continue. That we work together and expect from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala His blessings, because He always blesses those who work together for His cause. With this brief message, I take leave from you, and any questions, I'll be more than glad to respond. Any questions, please? I won't be able to see them. If I sit there, it is against adab actually to show them my back. So I don't mind standing. Please, any questions?
Thank you very much, Professor Abdulhamid, for your deliberation and excellent explanation of views. I don't want to summarize everything, but I want to highlight few points which are very important for our further reflection and action. He said with regard to Abdulhamid Abusulayman's contribution, he adopted a critical approach for the study of traditional Islamic thought. And Kamal Hassan created a term for the same purpose for critical study of traditional Islamic thought, that is relevantization. And he clearly defined relevantization as examination and assessment. Abdulhamid's vision was to transform the minds of young people through education and creating and establishing some organizations such as AMSS in North America and Canada. He, along with his colleagues like Professor Anis Ahmad, was always thinking how to translate our ideas into realities. How to translate our ideas and idealism into realities. So he, under the leadership of Ismail Farooqi, suggested through the establishment of International Institute of Islamic Thought, which provided a model of collective and institutionalized efforts. That is the reason that I value IIIT and its publication especially. Abdulhamid was always thinking and inspiring others to think, how can we make our vision and our dream into a practical reality. So he suggested, when he joined IIUM, through the formation of Kuliya of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences. Abdulhamid was a very humble human being, as Professor Anis argued. He was a man of principles who never compromised with principles. He demonstrated commitment to the study of the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, so what I will say, that because Professor Anis is standing there, so we open the floor for question and answer sessions. We can take 2 questions and then answers, and after that 2 questions. So please raise your hand. He is seeing you, he can entertain. Yes, brother, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Prof, for your presence with us. I have a question to you. Considering the profound impact of Professor Dr. Abdulhamid Abusulayman on the field of education and scholarship, how do you envision the role of contemporary universities in preserving and advancing the vision of scholars like him, particularly in the context of global challenges and the need for cross-cultural understanding?
I saw a hand here on it. Please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi, dear Prof. Alhamdulillah. I thank you all. Alhamdulillah. Yeah. My question is, after coming to IIUM, we have known about Islamization of knowledge, and we knew some people who have worked a lot to instrumentalize this idea across the whole world. So we have also known some people like Toha Jaber Alwani, and also Ahmad Otunji, Abdulhamid Abusulayman, Ismail Razi Al-Farooqi. So when we studied the course Islamization of Knowledge with our great Ustaz Dr. Mumtaz Ali, so we knew about Ismail Razi Al-Farooqi. So I would like to know, how did he how he was killed, and do you have, did you have any relationship with him, and how was that? Okay, Prof.
For the first question, you talked about global challenges. The fact of the matter is, It is universities and scholars and students who are to respond to any emerging challenges. And therefore, all of you who are here have to first understand what are these challenges. The challenges can be summarized in just few words. First and foremost, the challenge of globalization of economy, media and culture. Which means that if you open your net for any information, only that information is conveyed to you which is filtered and views from a certain viewpoint. Globalization of information, economy and education is done globally. You don't have that power in your hand right now, but at least you understand it. Try to identify where indirectly your mind is twisted, influenced, and certain Western notions are being implanted in your mind. One simple word. You hear from many statesmen and scholars that we are living in a society which should be inclusive, which should be observing human rights. Both terms are very innocent. But what's their context? Is there any awareness of human rights in Gaza and Palestine, or only in a place where some honest people say that sexual environment is bad? When this is said, human rights are hurt. When children are butchered, human rights are never touched. When you hear inclusiveness, what does that mean? Whom to include? That means in universities, if you have application form for students, whether they are male or female, then the forms must be redesigned because of an insignificant number of people who are given undue prominence globally by the so-called global powers. These innocent terms mean that if you don't understand them, you don't understand the West. The West has to be understood in its own context. So first problem is this globalization of economy, education and culture. Secondly, the lack of trust on their own selves in Muslims. If they want to buy a pencil and the pencil carries on it made in China or made in Germany, then they prefer made in Germany or made in China. Which means they think they cannot make even a pencil themselves. They must get it from China or Germany. This is a crude example for ideas. We borrow ideas from the West, use them with Islamic prefixes, and think we are intellectuals. Therefore, this concept of underestimating ourselves should be replaced with realizing your real strength. Your real strength is your Iman, your Rabb, your book, your Prophet. If that real strength is discovered, then you can respond to challenges which your question raised. Thirdly, this response to challenges can be done only when you excel in your area of activity. If you are studying architecture or studying political science and sociology or literature, and you are satisfied with your 18 hours of study of that subject, you cannot respond to the West, to the challenge. You need to master the area. And unless you have an ongoing urge to increase your knowledge continuously, you have no time to rest, no time to have vacation. You have only time to struggle for learning more and applying that in your life. If this is done, you are prepared to respond to the rest. If not, then think critically, do self-examination, and make a work plan for yourself to become capable to respond to these challenges. And we can do it. It is doable. People have done it, and Muslims can do it. Your question, brother, I think should be rephrased. Not how he died, but how he lived. How he lived was a struggle. How he lived was a transformation. I knew him from 1962, before I met Abdulhamid. I invited him as a young teacher in Karachi University to deliver lectures. I was invited to Abdulrahman Marhoom to deliver lectures. So I knew both of them when I was a very, very young lecturer. And then I knew him when I came to America in 1969 to work under him as my teacher and supervisor. And then to work with him as his colleague in same university, teaching there, traveling with him, staying with him, sometimes sleeping in his home. So Ismail Farooqi was not an outsider for me. A person with whom I lived over 2 decades. So I knew very well. And that's why I said, Ismail Farooqi of 1962, whom I met for the first time, was a different person than what he was in 1970. He was a thorough nationalist in 1962. I have read his book, Kuruba, with his own signatures. I have it. But he is not the same man who wrote Tawheed. Different man. And in that, definitely, it's not just Farooqi, but many others have a contribution, interacting with him, discussing with him, and trying to bring him into the streamline of realist thought. So Ismail Farooqi definitely made a great impact. He was living as a mujahid, as a spokesperson for Islam in North America, as someone who had uncountable energy and extreme command over Western thought as well as Islamic disciplines. Very few people have that knowledge that Ismail Farooqi had, and since I'm an eyewitness and a person who worked with him in AMSS for over 10 years, being Secretary General and then President, and he being part of this whole process, I think his contribution is enormous in the whole awareness about the subject and its realization.
Okay, please 2 more questions, but try to be very short.
Can I make a last question? It will be really beneficial for us.
Yes.
Yes.
After
You had a question already.
Yes, brother.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi
Assalamu
wabarakatuh.
alaikum.
My question is regarding this Islamization of knowledge. But can my prof allow me to speak in Arabic, please?
Please.
Okay. Can I speak in Arabic?
Yes, you can do.
Okay. عن هذا العنوان الإسلاميزيشن of knowledge لطالما سألت عنه ولم أجد إجابة تقنعني إلى الآن. بما أن هذه العلوم نقول إنها علوم إسلامية أصالة قبل أن يأخذها الغرب ليطورها ويدخل فيه ما شاء ويحذف فيها ما يشاء ثم يبرزها لنا في صورة جديدة لنأتي ونقول Islamization of knowledge. لماذا لا نقول re-Islamization of knowledge، نقول Islamization of knowledge بما أنها أصالة إسلامية ونحن الآن نريد أن نجدد أصالتها، لماذا نقول Islamization؟ ثم أخيرا أريد أن أعرف يعني معنى Islamization of knowledge بالتحديد باللغة العربية، يعني ترجمة هذه العبارة Islamization of knowledge أريد أن أعرف ترجمتها يعني محددة باللغة العربية. شكرا لكم.
Thank you very much. Islamization is essentially ma'rifah. Essentially, it is trying to look on knowledge from the Quranic and Sunnah perspective. Create that knowledge which is based on Quran and Sunnah. This is Islamization. Now, the fact of the matter is, Islamic ulum, towards you mentioned and referred, have gone through various historical processes. What the movement wants to contribute is to create a critical approach towards what has been existing as Turas Islami. Turas Islami is not something abstract. It is linked with specific geopolitical, regional aspects. While Islam is not bound by any space or any area or time. Therefore, even those disciplines like fiqh, for example, if fiqh is subject to stagnation and no new areas are explored, then it needs to be quote unquote Islamized in the sense of becoming dynamic and resolving current issues. So it's not that Islamization means they are un-Islamic before that. No. It is misunderstanding of the term. That's why I'm saying you may use any term, but so long as you have a critical approach which is based on application of the Quran and Sunnah, that is Islamization. Another question.
Assalamualaikum, Prof. Anis. I am a student at this time. I'm a student of Prof. Osman Makkah, and he used to say that when it comes to the idea of exploration knowledge, okay, officially exploration knowledge started with the Mecca Conference in 1997, and then there are schools of Prof. Said Nakib, there's a school of Prof. Ismail Faruqi, there's also school of Prof. Said Nasr. Okay. But the idea is, Prof. Osman used to say this, you look at the first exploration of knowledge, you look at the Baitul Hikmah, in Baghdad, where they started with the collection of books from the new land, from Syria and all that, from India, and translate into Arab. And then from there they make it, they study and they compare the Quran, Al-Farabi and all that. That's what Osman used to say. Okay, so how you compare with what we have since 1967? I know it is probably too short, you say it's not even 70 years. But how do you compare that, if you were to compare the progress of our effort of social knowledge now to the time of, say, what happened during the golden age of Islam, during the time of Farabi, probably. Okay.
Thank you very much. Every scholar has a right to interpret knowledge in view of priorities. A philosopher looks on Islam from philosophical viewpoint. sociologists from point of view of sociology, and so on and so forth. Therefore, anyone among contemporary scholars, some of them you name, others are not named, but anyone has a right to come up with one or the other approach. My concern is not whose approach is right or wrong. My concern is very simple. I understand Islamization or IUK or whatever you call. Knowledge to be created based on the Quranic and Sunnah principles for the benefit of humanity. This is Islamized knowledge. It has nothing to do with who is the originator of this term and who claims I was the first to use it. It's irrelevant. I don't discuss all those things because they are all individuals who talked about it. And before them, many have talked about it. Lastly, when we talk about Darul Hikmah and many others, don't forget that was a very specific project, a project of introducing Greek thought by preserving it in Arabic language. It was not Islamization at all. It was Greekization of Muslim thought. Therefore, many big names that one of them you mentioned, and there are many others, make a comparative study. Ibn Sina, Ibn al-Arabi, many others compare their views with earlier scholars from other traditions, and you will find a reflection of those ideas. Does not make difference if those are given by Muslim scholars. Therefore, I believe critical approach means that reading Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina and Ibn Arabi from the eyes of the Quran and Sunnah, not from the eyes of Upanishads and eyes of some Buddhist and Hindu concepts of transformation of soul and so on and so forth. That is not what should be considered as Islamized knowledge.
Yes, brother, can you ask your question?
You had a question already.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Iran. Sir, my question to you is, as you mentioned also that there is a strong influence of the media and all that, and it seems that the power of media to set the mind is always there, and it's a continuous process. They are inducing our minds through few of the Western anchors and journalists. So, sir, to control this, what steps the universities or countries or the scholars must have to take to stop this? Because what I believe and what is true is, if there is a scholar who is giving a speech, no more channels are covering that, but the speakers, anchors, the journalists, hundreds of Muslims, they listen them every day. So they have a kind of impact on our minds. So how to control that? Thank you so much.
First and foremost, every young person has to widen his or her horizon of knowledge. And that means you look for not one but 10 different sources. That gives you access to distinguish between what is colored and what is not colored. You are accountable for only what you can distinguish as colored or not colored. Not beyond that. That's what we call the cliff. You cannot go beyond that, very simply. But if you have done it and still you are not on right path, you are not accountable for it. Allah will guide you one day.
Anyone else?
The problem that I see more serious is institutions and teachers particularly have an obligation to go beyond the words they teach. You cannot teach sociology today without referring to sociologists Durkheim and Weber and Talcott Parson and others. But having talked about them, don't just tell us this is what Parson has said, but tell us how far is it right or wrong. When you come to that point, then you are serving knowledge. Otherwise, you are repeating knowledge. This is the lacuna that exists today. Textbooks you are bound to use published in the West, and they define things the way they want. But it's the task of the teacher, and if he or she is not doing, it's your task to find out, is this the only definition? And how does the Quran Sunnah define this? Then you will be able to liberate yourself from this colonization of mind. Any other questions, please?
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, there is one, yes, please.
Yes, please.
Brother, I'm Nizam Muhammad. I've been in the media for so long. I know him very long time ago. Right? Anyway, speaking of which, when sister mentioned about media, I can't help, I can't compel myself but to say something. The whole problem of media is that it is a very important and significant tool. I was not in media. I never loved and never believed in media until I came into being one of the active members of the media. I found that we are running away, we are shunning away from media when media is just a tool that is powerful to change the mindset of the people. My question, brother, is how can we help some of the good-natured creators or creative contents creators to fit in the good, the kind of message that we have in the public domain when they are left alone. I remember when I was given a lecture in a seminar, and I was asked, I was asked about how media can play a role. I said the problem is the good ones, the learned people are running away from the media, and they don't see it as a tool that they can acquire and get people and put within and then show more of our content. Your views?
Thank you very much. You are right. Media has become so much commercialized, so much vulgarized, that decent people don't want to come and become a victim of the anchor person. Anchor persons assume they know more than resource persons. That's why a number of educated persons don't like to be on TV screen or in social media. You are right, but that's not the solution. Solution lies with the coming generation. You have this small mobile in your hand, and that small mobile provides you with enormous resource, but to be done professionally. And I believe our young generation has more knack for professionalism than the old generation. You can convey message overtly and covertly. And message means that message which is conveyed in shortest possible words and symbols with widest aspect of truth. And that means you have to be professional. So if you become professional, you can turn the tides very easily. If you don't become professional yourselves and leave the ground for shaitan to manipulate, then shaitan has much power to manipulate. I don't blame elderly people, but I challenge youth. They should come out with creativity. They know symbolism of color and language and words, and that must be used appropriately with confidence. But first they must know what is total truth not partial. Second, they should know how they can bring a soft revolution and not a bloody revolution. If these aspects are clear to them professionally, I'm again repeating, professionally, then no one can face them. They are bound to succeed globally.
One question from my side. You said IIUM is a movement. Can you just elaborate some
I
more?
said that I used that word for Rifa and I also used that for IIUM. I don't call Rifa just a university. It stands for a vision which has been written down in a booklet form by me, stamped and sealed by the Board of Trustees and Board of Governors as an official document. So when I am not there, that vision is there. IIUI has a similar understanding of its mission. It's something different that for a while you may have toned down your vision. But original vision was very simple. Every single area of knowledge is to be approached with a critical mind and with relevancy of that with Muslim Ummah. If that becomes your objective and goal, then you are a movement. If you think that by printing 5 Scopus Index papers, I will be known as a scholar, then you have not understood the meaning of movement. Then you are just improving your own status. So faculty members and students both have to understand, if you are a movement, you keep on moving, progressing, transforming, not by your oration, but by your own behavior and productivity.
Anyone?
Yes, last question, please. Yeah, from here.
Please.
Okay, Assalamualaikum, Professor Anis. I'm Adirul from IRKHS. You said earlier about the movement, which is IIUM as movement is very interesting term for me, because we nowadays, especially students, do not see IIUM as the movement of the IOK agenda. But however, particularly for the Islamic movement, so how do you see the difference between the time of Abdulhamid Abusulayman, how the Islamic movement in Malaysia particularly supported him, or maybe the Wami in the Wami age supported him, and how we as the Islamic movement nowadays have to play our role in supporting the agenda of Islamization of knowledge. Thank you so much, bro.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, when I say Islamic orientation or an institution as a movement, it does not mean that it has to be linked with any other institution. I do not think WAMI can be credited for what was done in IRKH or in II. WAMI had its own youth agenda. Abdulhamid was involved. I was in the founding meeting of WAMI present myself. So I know from the beginning it was not a matter of academic program of universities. It was mainly addressing intellectual issues of youth. Then, why do I use the word? Again, I have just said that I have been using that for Rifa, and I would like to use that also for IIUM, because when Abdulhamid was here, Professor Kamal was here, many others were here, then we had a system of getting together in small groups all over the campus on Wednesdays afternoon around 4 p.m. Every student was involved in their group. That means developing ikha, brotherhood, developing ijtimaiyya, becoming aware of what are the issues. This is what was known as Usra. And there were 3 thick manuals prepared for those Usras by people of IRKS and Center for Basic Knowledge. When IIUM was a movement, then every month Qiyamul Layl was done by its faculty members. Every month they had intellectual discourse, faculty members presenting a paper, discussing together. There were retreats going out of the campus, which means very dynamic program for youth, faculty members and families. That makes an institution a movement. That transforms people, their mind and vision and behavior. And I have every hope and confidence that under the new rector, inshallah, you should be able to make IIU as a movement for ethical, moral change in society. Not a movement in the sense of any political group. No, I do not believe in political groups. I believe academia has to play its role as a transforming force of youth and society. No university can detach itself from society. If you don't have social impact, you have not yet done your job. Society must recognize you. Your brand should be visible by your behavior. It's not just a long scarf from head till lower part of body covering hips, which is symbol of IIU. No. Besides that, how you deal with issues, how you resolve those issues. And once you do that, then you are a movement for not only this institution, but for the whole country. And that was the vision, that is the vision that I think is going to take place inshallah in future.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Anis, for your time. And
Thank you very much, Professor Mumtaz. Thank you very much, Professor Anis. Alhamdulillah, extend our heartfelt gratitude to Professor Dr. Anis Ahmad for delivering such an inspiring lecture. I believe we can carry on and on. I believe that there are still many questions in your head to the professor. Hopefully you will have good opportunity to talk to your professor personally. But we will stop at this point. Our sincere thanks also to Professor Mumtaz for helping moderate the session. And now is the moment for the presentation of token of appreciation. I would like to call upon Professor Dr. Shukran Abdulhamid to hand over the souvenir of presentation to our esteemed speakers and moderator. First to our moderator today. Okay, sama-sama maybe can take picture. I would like to invite Brother Mas'ud to lead us in the recitation of the dua.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم إنا نسألك من الخير كله عاجله وآجله ما علمنا منه وما لم نعلم ونعوذ بك من الشر كله عاجله وآجله ما علمنا منه وما لم نعلم اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فينا شقيا ولا مطرودا ولا محروما اللهم اجعلنا من أهل العلم والحق والفلاح في الدنيا والآخرة اللهم اجعل عمل الشيخ عبدالحميد أبوسليمان في ميزان حسناته ويجعله في مراتب أهل الجنة اللهم اجزه عن جهوده في خدمة العلم والجامعة خيرا وبارك في عمله ومؤلفاته واجعلها في ميزان حسناته وارفع درجته في الدنيا والآخرة اللهم بارك في هذا المؤتمر واجعله فارسا لخيره ونجاحه وتقدمه. اللهم احسن عاقبتنا في الأمور كلها وأجرنا من خزي الدنيا وعذاب الآخرة. O Allah, bless this university and its teachers and students and make it a source of knowledge and understanding. Make them role models in serving the Ummah, knowledge and active in goodness and virtue. O Allah, reward the guests and the organizers of this conference with the best of rewards. Bless their efforts and their work. Grant them success and prosperity in all their endeavors. O Allah, make this conference as a source of goodness, blessings and success, and place it in their record of deeds until the day of judgment. Ya Tuhan kami, berikanlah kami kebaikan di dunia dan kebaikan di akhirat, dan lindungilah kami daripada azab neraka. Allahumma ihfaz ikhwanana al-muslimina fi Filastin wal Sudan wal Syria wal Yaman wal Iraq wa kull bilad al-muslimin. Allahumma farij anhum humumahum وارزقهم الأمن والسلام ووفقهم للنصر والتمكين. آمين يا رب العالمين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you very much, Brother Mas'ud, for that beautiful dua. With that, I conclude my duties as the MC of the annual memorial lecture. Let us end this session with tasbih kafara and the recitation of Surah Al-Asr.